All right. Hello again. Today we'll be doing a different style video to like the usual I be doing, which is like just the free like just analysis. Today we'll be looking at seven of the top clubs in Europe, and basically I'm gonna give a summary of each squad and on why I think they could win the UCL. So there'll be like three main topics I'll kind of talk about for each team. One will be like a tactical breakdown and like what gives them the key edge. Second will be like key players. So I'll highlight 2 to 3 key players in their lineups that I think could be difference makers for them. And then the third, I'll also talk about their downsides. So something that could come to bite them in the future. But yeah, well let's get right into it. I got all the squads kind of lined up in the lineup builder already. My knowledge on some of them is obviously better than others, but I think the out of all the clubs in Europe, these are the biggest ones. So like, it's let's just get into it. So we'll shuffle this and then let's just spin the wheel. Let's see what our first squad will be. All right, okay. So we're starting off with Chelsea, the Club World Cup winners. So here we have Chelsea's side. This was a starting 11 that played in the Club World Cup final. Obviously, Hato was Chalaba, but since he just got confirmed, I think I just threw him in there. I think he'll be playing in this sort of left center back position. He can also be good cover for Cucurella, but yeah. So first, let's talk about the tactical breakdown for Chelsea. So Chelsea, they want to be a possession-based side. Obviously, Maresca is uh, a player that comes from, or a manager that comes from the Pep tree, and obviously we saw what type of ball that he wanted to play towards the end of the season last year. The start of the season as well, Chelsea were pretty good, if you guys remember. But towards the end of the season, obviously the Club World Cup is where they really started to shine. They play in a 4-2-3-1 usually, and in possession, you kind of have this sort of setup with Palmer in this right half space, and then Gusto would push up, and it would be like kind of like this. Oops. Colwell will move here. Hato will probably move here. I could probably see Cucurella move up, and then Hato move into this space, and they'll have a midfield three like this, and they'll build up in kind of a 2-3-4-1. So yeah, this is kind of where Chelsea are really dominant in possession. Is you look at the numbers that they have in midfield, it's so easy for them to form a midfield overload, especially against 4-4-2s, which obviously aren't that common, but even against the more common 4-3-3s now, you have 3 players underneath and then 4 players on top. You're gonna have Enzo and Palmer very central, and then you have Neto and Gusto kind of holding with, and then you have Cucurella that can come inside and overlap. You have James that can come inside and form like this 2 with Caicedo. You have probably one of, if not the best 6 in the world in terms of ball recovery and like kind of just being that traditional 6. That position has been revitalized and kind of formed into like a completely different role now, with like obviously after like Busquets came into the picture for Barcelona, but he's defensively one of the best 6s in the world. James, super technical on his day, probably the most complete player in this Chelsea squad, and probably one of the most complete right backs in the world. But the only concern with him is obviously staying fit. But the tactical edge that Chelsea have is they're so dominant in the middle, and also their squad depth is tremendous. Obviously, we know how many signings they're making. They're looking at Javi Simmons still. They just signed Hato. They have Gittins coming in. They have Estevao coming in, and these are just tremendous signings for them. So yeah, this is kind of how Chelsea can set up out of possession. They also are so secure on the ball. We saw against PSG how they kind of managed that with Robert Sanchez coming into the play, being like better on the ball, another thing to highlight is their off the ball structure with Caicedo kind of manning this midfield. I think this midfield duo is so good, and what it does do is allow Palmer to return to his more preferred position. Is because if you look at last year, why Palmer had that streak of like just poor form, couldn't really perform in or couldn't really find the back of the net. His GA numbers were a lot lower than his first year at Chelsea, but then in the Conference League final he did really well, and then also in the Club World Cup is because now you have Enzo pushing in this middle position, and you have a striker that's João Pedro isn't really a dedicated striker. He's not a true 9, but he's a player that he's almost like a second striker role. And that I think helps Palmer a lot because it allows Palmer to live in this sort of half space and perform those combinations with more technical players. Enzo is pushed more higher where he's more comfortable, and Gusto can be the one out wide. So when you have Gusto out here, you're attracting the opposition fullback. You have him on you, and then Palmer can operate in the space in between the the center back and the fullback, which I think he's best at, and that's evident by his 2 goals that he scored in the Club World Cup final. Chelsea are a great side at pressing as well. Their pressing structure is really, really good. They pick out a weak link and they try to compress the pitch to that side whenever that player is in possession, which I think is really suffocating for offenses. And then obviously Pedro Neto here. They have a player that I'm super high on, Jamie Gittins, that can come in and play this. He's so good at those 1v1 duels, which Chelsea have been needing to obviously overcome those low blocks. So yeah, that's like a bit of like a tactical breakdown on Chelsea. Cucurella is obviously a really important player, but let's see, they're key players. One of them obviously is Cole Palmer, and Cole Palmer being at his best, I think will be super key for them to go far in this competition. He's kind of like that focal point of the offense. And obviously with Enzo and Gusto allowing him to be in those spaces that he is so good at or good in will be key. So I think Palmer is their biggest player. Second player, I would go Cucurella, just because he's so like comfortable at inverting. We know how much Maresca loves that inverting one fullback. He does it always in possession, whether he wants him to go into the midfield, whether he wants to form a back 3. He's just really good on the ball. I think he's a super key player. And then third, I would actually probably say Caicedo, and Caicedo being fit. I know that's 3 players. That's probably like pretty common, but it's kind of evident with these sides, with the big sides. You kind of know like who their key players are going to be and all that. But Caicedo, if he can stay fit as he has been, he's tremendous. And I really think that he could make that push. He's already one of the best in the world, but I think he can make that push to be the best in the world next season with how Chelsea look to line up. So yeah, if you're a Chelsea fan, be excited. Some of their downsides though is I think with Reece James kind of with his injury problems, it forces another player to come in this midfield. You can have probably Romeo Lavia would come in, but even Lavia, looking at their squad, I have it pulled up over here. They don't really have a player that can come into the midfield to cover well over there. And when they have Reece James there, they can play the system that they want to perfection. When you push Enzo down and then you want to put maybe Palmer in here and then you have Neto on this side, you're not maximizing the potential of your squad. Obviously, I think the squad depth is super good, so they can rotate and play new systems, which I think is really, really good. That's a big thing that you need if you want to win the Champions League. You have to be able to adapt, and that adaptability is there. But I think their the constant changing of structures and all that will be a downside to Chelsea. Obviously, their center backs I still think are not the best, and their goalkeeper is not the best. It's this sort of space where they can really be exploited. And on the transition, I can see Chelsea against low blocks, they'll probably suffer. They can't really break them down as well as we saw last season. And then being hit on transition will be a key thing, especially if they're inverting a fullback and playing that like 2-3-4-1. that I was suggesting. But yeah, I think some poor matchups for Chelsea, probably out of the teams over here. Obviously, Barcelona would be a poor matchup for them, and I think I think Liverpool could cause serious problems against this Chelsea side. But yeah, that's probably enough on Chelsea, and we can move on to the second team. Ooh, PSG. Okay, so this one's pretty simple. Champions League winners last season. Um, they have talent. They've retained everybody. Obviously, they might lose Donnarumma with how things are looking, but they're looking to replace him. Replace him. I think his name is Chevalier, the goalkeeper. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I mean, won the Champions League last season. Tactically, they're one of the best sides in the world. They're still the one. They're still the best side in the world. I think that final loss against Chelsea doesn't really change much. It's just a one-off game. They weren't prepared, um, and they lost. But so how PSG like to set up, in possession is really interesting. They push Hakimi really high, and they have Vitinha or Neves as like the deep playmaker with Fabian Ruiz as more of a high roaming eight, and then they're like in this sort of setup. And what's so good about this is obviously their player quality. They're so technical in midfield. They can just dominate possession against every side. They have such hard workers off the ball in both pressing and defending. Kvaratskhelia will come all the way back here to help defend. Dembele, he can drop in and form these like triangles with the midfield. Doué then moves centrally, or maybe it'll be Kvara centrally. But one thing that's so evident or is consistent is Hakimi will be the one that's kind of either more out wide. If Hakimi comes, inside, Doué will be the one far out wide, and then Kvaratskhelia will come inside if Dembele drops. So there's three main things that these attackers need to focus on. One player has to be holding the width, one player comes to help in the midfield, and then one player covers centrally. That rotation and fluidity with the front three is why they're so dynamic in possession. That's why they're so positionless in possession. When Vitinha is helping build up in the back three over here, and you have Ruiz and Neves over here, you have Mendes that can come up here, and then you have like this four in attack, and then Hakimi can come up in this position. You have this five now. Maybe Hakimi drops down a bit and then forms like the three. Now you have a four, and then Dembele drops in. Maybe Doué drops in. They're so fluid and understanding, and I think they have the most complete kind of tactical setup when they're all healthy. So, and obviously you won the Champions League last season. You don't break what's been a working system. To some of their key players, I think I would go Marquinhos as the leader of this side and their best defender. I think he's key in being in this side. You can even say Pacho. Pacho was like incredible for them last season, but I'll give it to Marquinhos just because not only are they two brilliant defenders, but Marquinhos has that leadership ability. I think Hakimi being the best right back in the world and just how flexible he is. He can find himself in that box. He can find himself all the way back here. Like this whole right side is dominated by him. I think he's a key player, and he really allows this attack to be as fluid as it is. So I give them two as their two key players in this lineup. If you want to go a third, I would give it to either Vitinha or João Neves. I think they're interchangeable. João Neves' engine is just incredible. For his size, he makes up for it in the effort that he puts in. And he's so technical on the ball. But yeah, those are some of their key players. There's not much to talk about. This side won the Champions League. Not too much to break down because they obviously have something good going for them already. Some of the downsides, I think tactically, when opposition brings the press to them, you can really pin them back in their own half, and that's where it can get dangerous for PSG. If you look at the Bayern Munich game in the semifinals, that's what happened to them. They were pinned back for the whole first half, and obviously the Musiala injury was like a big change for Bayern. They had to go with more direct wingers instead of attacking through the center, so they lost a bit of that dynamic. which is why I think they ended up losing. And then obviously PSG just outworked them. And also another weakness is I think physically they can get dominated off the ball. And when you have players that are not only technically sound but also physically imposing, they can really prove to be a difficulty, especially transitioning from the third in the opposition half and then going through their midfield and then getting to their defensive line is I think where they can be really really penetrated. And with this kind of system that they have, there's a lot of holes that are left up. So when players push up, it's all about finding the gaps. When you look at like how Chelsea scored their first goal, they found the gap, or the second goal actually with Cole Palmer, they found the gap with Nuno pushing high and not many players being in this sort of space right here that I'm highlighting. And then obviously Cole Palmer scored. So those are the two biggest downfalls, I feel. And then some of the poor matchups. I mean, obviously we can say Chelsea because they lost to Chelsea, but I think another side that could be that could cause a lot of problems for them is Bayern Munich. Two sides that put in the best performances against them at the Club World Cup. So I think those two would be their most difficult matchups. But you won the Champions League last season. You're only going to learn from it, and I think they'll be a serious contender this year. Yeah, enough on PSG, and we can move to the next side. Okay, Bayern Munich. I would say this is the side that I know the least about, especially because I haven't really done much research on them since their new signings, but I feel like I have a good understanding to obviously do this like less in-depth kind of breakdown of them. So I see Bayern Munich lining up like this, especially with the injury to Musiala. If Musiala was in, I think he would come in for Goretzka and they would switch to a 4-2-3-1 with Musiala as like that cam, and I think that's how they're most effective. But what's really good about Bayern tactically and how company sets them up is they have a really good off the ball press setup. They again are very suffocating. They'll like push onto a player that's the press trigger and really be imposing on him. We saw that with the PSG game, and they can really hold players in or hold oppositions in their own halves really really well. Like they can go 45 minutes and just live in the opposition half. They have lethal, like they probably have the best striker on the planet with Harry Kane. They just signed Luis Diaz, who I'm not very high on him. He's not like he's a good player, a very good player, but I don't think he's like a great like he's not a needle mover, I think is the best way to describe him. But he's so much better than Gnabry and Coman for this side. So I think it'll be good, and especially when Musiala's back, I think he gives them that dynamic on that left side that they're missing, that they have with Olise. Olise, while he's not the best finisher, he's so creative. And one thing, he does need to get better at his big game kind of impact. He needs to be more imposing. But I think he's still so young, and he's so talented. It'll just come with time. But he's so creative. His numbers last season were tremendous. He's great on the ball, and him paired with Musiala is so dangerous for this Bayern Munich side coming up against any opposition. I think they did really well bringing in Jonathan Tah and made this backline a bit more solidified. Obviously, it'll probably be Guerrero here early on instead of Davies, but Davies is coming back from his ACL tear, and I don't think it'll take long for him to take back that spot. And I think Davies will really, really help a lot with Luis Diaz over here, allowing Luis Diaz not to be like kind of on the touchline, but more inside, and which is how he played last season. In his last season with Liverpool, he was kind of that false nine that would kind of float into this space right here. And then with Davies out wide, it's just you have great players in close proximity of Goretzka or probably Pavlovic, and then it'll be like Pavlovic here and then Musiala like here, which is probably how Bayern Munich will run up their system. But yeah, he's most effective in this halfway, is getting shots off. He's a great striker of the ball. He's pretty pacey, and I think he'll really flourish in Bundesliga. But obviously, Bayern are judged on the Champions League, not Bundesliga. They're really dominant in that league. So yeah, that's a bit of how they'll be set up in the attack, solid defense, and I think their midfield pairing of like Pavlovic and Kimmich. Kimmich is so, I think now he's getting highly touted nowadays with him moving back into midfield. He did have a poor season 2 years ago when he was more playing at right back, but Company moved him back into midfield, and we really get to see his technical ability, his tempo setting, his dictating of the game. He's one of the best in the world at that, and so I think him moving into this midfield role will be really, really beneficial for Bayern, and having two physical presences paired with him while Musiala is out is only going to be more beneficial at getting him on the ball. I think he's probably their most key player to making things click and making things work in this Bayern side. I'll put Musiala in for now, but when Musiala is in this pocket over here and in between the lines, Kimmich is the one that's dictating play. You have Pavlovic as your traditional 6, and you have Olise that can come down more and combine, and you can have Luis Diaz push up high with Kane, and Davies hold more of the width. And then you have 3 players that are really, really good just at the back. Sacha Boey. I didn't really know much about him, but I did more research on him after the Club World Cup, and great on the ball. I think he's a really good cover for Kimmich because he's good at coming inside and playing, kind of forming that back 3 in possession, and then he can cover well. But he's also, when Kimmich wants to push high and kind of be in these sort of positions and dictate the final third more, he's good at coming right here and being that sort of anchor alongside Pavlovic. So yeah, I think it's kind of how Bayern will be set up. It's really unfortunate that Musiala got the injury. He's one of the best players, best young talents in the world. And I think when he's back, Bayern will kick it up a gear, kick it up a notch. I think some of the key players, obviously I highlighted Kimmich. I think another key player for them will be Jonathan Tah. You need one of the center backs to be really, really kind of imposing and have that structure in the back line, and I think Tah can be the one to do that, paired with Upamecano. Upamecano is really good. He's really kicked it up a gear, back to his best with Company. It's just, again, his big game ability needs to take a step up. And obviously Harry Kane, if he just continues how he's been performing, best striker in the world, it'll be all good. Some of their downsides is they don't really have that player that can pull them out of a rut. Say you're kind of holding, like PSG. If you look at PSG, for example, against Bayern Munich, that whole first half they got dominated and all that, but then you have players like Hakimi, players like Dembele that just can flip the script for you, And I think that will be that's something that Bayern is still missing. They don't have that needle mover. They're a great all-in-all team, but they don't have the top-end talent, especially with Musiala out. They don't have that physical, or not physical, but they don't have that player that can just take over a game and kind of be that difference maker, I think when Musiala is back, he's the closest they have to that. Harry Kane as well is the closest to that, and Olise needs to kind of develop into that. And I also think their backline is still a bit shaky. I think Tah is a good addition, but they don't have the depth there that's necessary. Kim and Jae is I don't really rate him that highly. Upamecano is he's always due for a bozo moment. So is Jonathan Tah. Jonathan Tah for Germany, he has struggled. We'll just see how Company makes it work. But yeah, I think some of their poor matchups probably would be Barcelona. I think Barcelona could run through this side, especially because Barcelona will be the ones kind of dominating and holding possession more. I think they're a really poor matchup for Bayern Munich. I also think Chelsea could do a good job on Bayern Munich, and I think Real Madrid, seeing the direction that Real Madrid are going with, especially with how I've kind of highlighted, I think they could also prove to be a real problem for Bayern Munich. But yeah, I think that's good enough for them. Then we can move to the next team. We got 4 left. I did forget Arsenal in this, now looking back at it, but I'll make a dedicated. I do want to make a dedicated video on Man City, Liverpool, and Arsenal, so I'll kind of talk about what I would have here in that Arsenal video. But now we have Man City. Man City, what an exciting side Pep is building. I think he's really getting into his bag for this season. I'm really excited to see what he does. This is kind of the lineup that I've gone with for Man City. They do have, obviously they have like a ridiculously deep squad, but they're not deep in the positions that you would really want them to be. You know, it's like they have very quality, you know, top end talent. I think their defensive cover is decent at center back. They have weak fullbacks, and they don't really have the sixes to cover. Obviously, Roger coming back is like huge for them. That's like their 6 and 8 in one, but the best midfielder in the world when he's fully healthy. Them signing a new keeper as well, I think, is huge. Is it James Trafford? Yeah, it is James Trafford. I think he's huge because Ederson is due a bozo moment every time. But I'll break down more of like Pep's tactical approach with this team in a full video, because I think he is really it's looking really good, really creative for Man City. But I'll set it up like this for now. This is how I view City. In this upcoming season, this is kind of how they have been playing. So it's almost this like you have like a 2-2-6 in possession, which City are trying to play, and it's like you can. I mean, the downsides are like very clear to see already, I feel. But what's so good about this is the counter press. So you can see you have a triangle here, you have a triangle on this side, and then obviously you have this midfield, or not midfield, but like central kind of dominance on the ball. You have all these players in the center, and what City want to do is just what they have always been doing: suffocate the opponent in their own half and dominate the ball. They want to attack this space right here, this space right here, and then this space right here. Ryan Ait-Nouri is a tremendous signing. Obviously, defensively, he doesn't need to step up, but on the ball, which City will be majority of the time, he's fantastic at holding this width. You have Nunez on this side. It allows Foden to be in this sort of half space, which I think why I say Foden is like he's a luxury player is obviously he's super talented. He's a phenomenal player, but he needs to be put in the right positions to perform at his best. And when he's not that good. We saw that last season with City suffering. Foden suffered a lot. And it does come down to confidence sometimes. But when he's in those positions to perform the best, he's only going to be better. Probably the best striker in the world in Haaland in terms of just like all around talent. I know I said Harry Kane is, but on his day, it's like you take Haaland over Kane. They're the top two. And so back to like what I was saying with the counter press is with these triangles, say you lose the ball in like this space right here, you have three players that instantly attack that, and then you have Tijani Reinders that will cover over here, Rodri that will kind of cover and float over there. You have two really good on the ball defenders in Gvardiol and Diaz, and so what they want to do is they just want to live even higher in the opposition half, and when they lose the ball, you want to have enough players to just like instantly like win it back. Like you want to win the ball back within like 5 to 10 seconds. For Man City, that's the principle that they're going with, and I think with this system, which is only one of their systems, I'll go more into it obviously in the video, as I said, in the dedicated video. But yeah, that's kind of how they want to play. Marmoush and Haaland is such a phenomenal strike partnership. I think Marmoush is so much like he's obviously quality on the ball. He can come in to this midfield and have Haaland like push back the defensive line. The more Haaland pushes back the defensive line, the more space these players get to work in. I think the introduction of Ryan Ait-Nouri is going to be huge for Jeremy Doku. I think this could be a big season for Doku because when you think about last season when he was the one that's just out here on the touchline, he's one of the best players in the world, like at the initial 1v1 phase. You know, like if you want to beat your man, Doku is like one of the best in the world. He's like one of the best in the world also to watch play. He's one of the most exciting players. But time and time again, he would get isolated on that side, and then they would push two onto him, maybe sometimes even three if you want to just fully suffocate him. But usually just two, and then obviously he's just isolated. He can't really do much, you know. But now with Ait Nuri holding the width, it allows Doku to get 1v1s more on CDMs, center mids, and center backs. Three players are more physical, less agile, and against Jeremy Doku, that's just, you know, a recipe for success for City. He can also like flip flop with Ait Nuri really well, play the combinations. Back to Reinders. Maybe Reinders can come here, form a three to get an overload. But even without the overload, these two players are so technically gifted on the ball. They can beat their man. You have Foden over here. We know how good Foden is in the right half spaces. Marmoush, I talked about. Haaland, we don't need to talk about him. Tijjani Reinders, what I really like about him is he's an all-out midfielder. Much better in the final third, obviously, but then him paired with Rodri will allow Rodri, obviously, with the ACL tear and 29 years old, 30 years old, he doesn't have the legs, so Reinders can be those legs going up and down the pitch. He's a phenomenal ball carrier, which is what City have really focused on this window with Reinders and Ait Nuri. They're so technically gifted on the ball. However, actually, before I get to the downsides, key players. Jeremy Doku, I think, will be a huge player for Man City this season. I think Reinders will be a huge player for Man City this season. And I think, obviously, Rodri. If Rodri can return to form, it's phenomenal for Pep. It's like a breath of fresh air for Pep. He'll be back to running whatever system he wants to run. He loves to have that like 6'8" hybrid player. And I think Rodri is just that. So yeah, those three players are going to be massive for Man City this season. But their downsides, I think, is very clear to see, and I think it was very clear to see in the Al Hilal game. Huge gaps out on the width, you know, and such huge spaces to cover. Al Hilal in that second half, they just made the switch from when you win the ball, don't dilly dally with it here, just play it long, have runners. Again, like teams that are good in transition against this Man City side are gonna flourish, especially on this right hand side, because Ait Nuri, yeah, he's not the best defender, but he is still a left back. He still is capable enough to run that, especially with Guardiola and Reinders kind of helping him cover. But Nunez isn't. Nunez is a natural, midfield. He's almost a natural 8 even. This side is going to get ran through for Man City, and that's why they were looking for a right back. That's why they wanted Jules Koundé, but Koundé re-signed. Koundé would have made the side so scary. But yeah, they're just going to get ripped apart in transition, and I think that saying that, the sides that are gonna really give City trouble are PSG, Real Madrid, Liverpool. They can dismantle the City side in transition. So I think that'll be a huge sign to see what Pep can do to mitigate that and kind of minimize that. That's why I think they need like a right back and a better 6 to be in there, because obviously Reinders and Rodri, they're gonna start, but you need when you want to win the Champions League, you need starter level players that are also on the bench that can come in, and put in a shift. I think Ait Nuri is a great signing, but then you're still losing that defensive capabilities on the side. So it'll be interesting to see how Guardiola covers. He just has a lot more space to cover. Maybe you can have Rodri drop in here, but then again, you're running into the same problems. This City midfield is just going to be so easy to bypass. This is kind of how Man City wanted to play last season, and then Rodri on his kind of last legs, he had so much, he was just more isolated in this midfield, and he's as good as he is. This space is impossible to cover for a single midfielder. So you would just see sides just coast through City's midfield line and instantly be attacking their defensive line, and that was just a struggle for Man City. And Pep's stubbornness, he didn't change, he didn't adapt, he didn't have the players to adapt to be fair to him, but. Yeah, that would be interesting to see. But in possession, City are phenomenal. They're going to be a phenomenal side. And now we're on to probably the big 3 for this video. Let's see who's next. All right, we got Barcelona. I'm not going to do too much of a tactical breakdown this side because I made a full-on video on them. If you want that, you can kind of go watch that video. But we know how Barcelona play. Obviously, super high line. Love to push the midfield up to combine. Have players in between the lines. They have, one of the best players in the world, Lamine Yamal. One of the best midfielders in the world, Pedri. Um, one of the best fullbacks in the world in Balde. Two things I do want to highlight though is what they've done so well this transfer window is they've directly highlighted their weak points. Goalkeeper, they've got one of the best young goalkeepers, most promising young goalkeepers in the world in Joan Garcia. They needed depth at wingers. They got Rooney, Bargy, and they got Marcus Rashford. So much flexibility in the side now with those two signings, and much better depth. Their midfield obviously doesn't need much to talk about. Their depth there is phenomenal. Their center backs, again, great center backs there to hold that high line. I would say their weak points. Let's just the key players in this side, Pedri obviously and Lamine Yamal. I don't, I think with those two in the side, you can swap out you can play the whole fucking B team, and they're still gonna be such a good team. But those two are they're the pillars of this side. They're the things that make the, system churn. Their weaknesses though is they need to get that high line under control. The spaces that the fullbacks leave in behind, and especially when you are, you don't have Balde and Koundé available, they're just so easy to attack, and they can easily get run through. In transition, I still think Barcelona are a side that can be broken down really easily. I think when you play a narrow formation against this side, it's so easy to just run through them. And even if they get the high line under control and kind of drop it a bit against sides that are good in transition, like Inter Milan were, and are physically imposing, I think in transition they get overrun. We saw that with obviously the Inter Milan game. We even see that with the later Clásicos, and I think that 4-3 they won. But it was a clear sign that in defense, or when they're playing that high line and they have really pacey forwards that are narrow, not really stretching the defensive line, but just kind of running through the gaps, they can be overrun. And then Joan Garcia is left in a 1v1. Obviously, it's not Szczesny anymore. It's not Ter Stegen. It's Joan Garcia. So that goes back to them addressing their biggest issues. So that is an improvement, but it's still you put any goalkeeper in 1v1. It's just it's not a situation that you want to be in. But they do dominate the ball a lot, which is great to see, and it kind of mitigates that. And also they're really press resistant, so when sides go to press them, it's difficult because they can just play around them. And then also when you go into a low/mid block, they have the exact player profiles to kind of break that down. So they, I think, are probably the biggest candidates to win the UCL this season, just because they have addressed their weaknesses, and they were already one of the best sides in Europe. But I think kind of keeping the squad healthy is one thing. Flick needs to be more flexible in how he plays, which he has the players to now, so I expect him to. And also they need to work on being hit on transition, because I think you can really bait the side into pushing really high, and if you have the players that can win the ball off them, and you commit a lot of players forward, it's gonna prove dividends for whoever's playing Barcelona. But yeah, I'd put them right at the top for candidates to win the Champions League this year. There's not really too many negatives to the side. Now we got two left. And we're going to be talking about Liverpool now. Probably the most anticipated squad of this upcoming season with all the signings they've been making. But yeah, so here's the side that I've picked for Liverpool. Obviously, I know they're linked with Isak. I'm not going to include him yet because that changes up so much. And I also want to make a dedicated video on them, on Liverpool. But yeah, what a side. This is a really, really, really exciting side to see upcoming. So how they're going to set up. Last season, how they played is in a 4-3-3 with McAllister, Gravenberch, and Szoboszlai. Gravenberch was the 6, Szoboszlai was a bit higher, and then like a roaming eight, and then McAllister was like more of a true eight. They had Gakpo out wide, and they had Luis Diaz as a false nine, and then Salah. What this formation allowed is, you had Salah manning the right wing on his own, and then you have Trent kind of inverting here, and then he formed like not really a partnership, but like a two with Grafenberch, and that allowed McAllister and Soboslai to push up like this. And what that also allowed is Luis Diaz would kind of float into these spaces right here, and they would be set up like this: Gakpo holding with, Salah holding with, Luis Diaz in these sort of left half spaces. Soboslai would kind of be that free roamer to either come into the box or be over here. Trent would be like a single facilitator, McAllister as a true eight, and then you had Salah be the main guy kind of creating and all that. But now with Ekitike, with Soboslai, Frimpong, Kerkez, the new signings, Wirtz, it really, really changes things up. So now you have like a true nine. And Ekitike, he's really good at building up with the midfield, but he also likes this left hand half space. You'll see a lot of his runs and everything, and his goals coming from these sort of spaces. But he's more of a true nine than Luis Diaz was, which is great. And I think they'll kind of set up like this, with Salah coming more inside. With his age, obviously, you want to push him closer to the goal just because of the talent that he is. And Wirtz, he's a 10, but he's a left-sided 10. If you look at Bayern Munich or Bayer Leverkusen, his heat map was these sort of spaces right here. And if you play him right there, that's exactly where he wants to be, where he's going to perform best. And you have Soboslai come inside. Frimpong, you haven't bought him to be a true right back. You've bought him to be that guy on the width. And what a player, he is to support Salah on this side. I think he's the perfect man to help dominate possession for Liverpool. But I can see them setting up almost like this. And it's not really getting the best out of Kerkez, but I'll get to that. So you have Soboslai, one of the best, probably the runners of the team. He'll be good in recoveries, great on the ball. I think he'll benefit a lot from having Salah and Ekitike in front of him, Wirtz next to him, and Frimpong out wide. He'll do great. You can have that exchange as well with Wirtz. They're like roaming 10s, two roaming 10s. Even McAllister can come up, and maybe Wirtz, he's not as good as coming down, but just having a player to maybe help build up the play, just more fluidity between these three is really great. Ekitike can push out wide, and then Soboslai can make those box runs. You can have Wirtz come over here and have shots from this left-hand half space. In attack, they're super exciting. But then you can even have Kerkez come out here. Kerkez's deliveries into the box are phenomenal. He's so good at crossing and all that. And then you have Grafenberch come down here. McAllister as like that single six, which I don't really like. But when you're holding possession, which Slot wants to do, this is phenomenal. Like, just looking at the setup, like you have all the triangles. You have you can almost form like a near like box in the attack to build off of, and you can again just pin opposition back. And you have Frimpong, a tremendous runner that can track back. Kerkez as well, physically imposing, great on the ball. He can hold with, but there's just so much fluidity and flexibility in the side that it's going to be exciting to see. You have Grafenberch. I think he'll develop even further into the six role. And the thing is, with how physically imposing Van Dijk and how good he is, and Konate as well, they can even form this too and commit even more men forward. You can have something like this, even with McAllister kind of combining here and coming more into the attack to support Wirtz and Soboslai. Or you can just have them kind of drop off and be behind, It's really exciting. I would be super excited if I was a Liverpool fan, and I think they have one of the best squads in Europe now with how they've been dealing with the transfers. Isak changes this so much, and I almost don't know if it's like a good thing. Because if you spent 95 million on Ekitike, you're gonna start him. But if you sign Isak, you have to start him as well. And I don't like how Liverpool set up with the 4-4-2. I've kind of thought about it and kind of seen it out, and it doesn't maximize their strengths. So it'll be interesting to see. Key players in the side, Wirtz, I think he's going to be a cog of this team. He's so good. Keeping Konate, especially because their defensive depth or center back depth is really minimal. If they can keep him and keep him healthy, he's going to be phenomenal. So I think those two are their top two key players. Obviously, like Van Dijk is the obvious one, but I don't need to clarify that. And then Salah as well. Like if Salah can keep performing how he's been performing, which I think he will, with how this side is progressing with Wirtz and Ekitike in attack, and Frimpong and Kirkes, I think it could be another phenomenal season for Salah. And then downsides, honestly, like there's not too many with this Liverpool side, especially if they're going to be playing at their best. Obviously, you want this all to click soon. It could be a bit of a wait to see how this side works, like, you know, in terms of like chemistry and all that. And if you look at like PSG early last season, it took a bit of a while for them to click, but when they clicked, they were like phenomenal. So you just gotta hope that this Liverpool side can click early. You need to keep Konate and Van Dijk healthy at the back, because they're gonna be rocks to the back, very physical, imposing center backs. So you need that physicality in the side, especially because you don't really have it in the midfield. Obviously, you have Gravenberch. I think Gravenberch, if he can develop as a 6 better, could be really, you know, it's going to benefit a lot. He needs to work on his passing range more, I think. But him on the ball and on the half turn, he's phenomenal. Like he's been a revelation ever since Arne Slot came to Liverpool. I think with Frimpong pushing really high, and then you have Salah inside, they can again be caught on transition on this right hand side, and with Gravenberch, probably he'll want to push up higher. That leaves Konate in like an isolation. So sides, I think, will be able to benefit from this right hand side a lot against Liverpool. And I would say poor matchups for them, probably Real Madrid with their right hand side with Trent and Mbappe and Vinicius on the counter. I think they can really hit the side on transition. And I would say Bayern Munich would also be a really good side to play this Liverpool 11. Now, obviously PSG as well. But I don't know. Even with PSG, they I think Liverpool will have them this year if they play. Yeah, and again, like full tactical breakdown will come for Liverpool. And then last team, my club, the biggest club in the world, the European Giants, the owners of the Champions League, Real Madrid. All right, I've done 2 videos on this. I'm gonna just fully skip over the tactical breakdown. We know, like, you know, you all can watch that video if you want to see how I think Real Madrid are gonna set up and how they're gonna play next season. But we'll just talk about key players. I think Tchouaméni. I'm not gonna say Valverde. Valverde is like the obvious one for everybody, and I don't need to highlight him. I think Tchouaméni. I think Dean Howson, and I think Camavinga. 3 of the most important players, or three key players in this squad for how Xabi Alonso wants to play. I think Tchouaméni is one of the pillars of this team. I think how I've broken down Camavinga in my previous videos, he's also a huge kind of inclusion in this side. And Dean Howson, obviously, he's our best defender, and I think with build up, that's the main reason we have bought him, to have that ball playing center back that can help build up play. I think he'll be a phenomenal kind of presence. And I think downside of this side is figuring out a way to make Vinny and Mbappe work, which I've kind of talked about in my previous videos. They can. I think that's an issue. And then I think the biggest issue, though, is if you can get this side to work as a unit and find out that like best progression for this team, make them all work as one unit off the ball and on the ball, sky's the limit for the side. Because when you look at just pound for pound, just player for player talent, this is the best squad in Europe. They have the best players, or they have world-class players at every single position. They have like a top three, top five guy at every single position, at every single phase of play. You just gotta make them. Xabi Alonso's biggest thing is make them work as a unit and find that system that works best, or works best to make the side play as a unit. Because when you have a coordinated press and a coordinated attack, it's tremendous. And we've already seen in the Club World Cup how in attack, Real Madrid, and in possession, they look phenomenal. It's just about building on do you want to go with a coordinated team press that's more suffocating, like Bayern Munich do, or do you want to have a counter press system, which I think would work really well with this side? I would lean more towards a counter press that drops into a mid block. I think that's the probably the press progression that I would go with. It's just about figuring out how that works, and that's pretty situational. That's like a training drill thing. But yeah, those are the biggest downsides for this side. But it's Real Madrid. Like you can never count them out in the Champions League. They've won 15 for a reason. They will be back. They will win a Champions League within the next 3-4 years. Most definitely, you have the squad to do so. I think keeping players healthy is another issue. They've recently revamped their whole medical staff, so that will probably be a big help for them in keeping players healthy. Because when you can feel the consistent 11, it helps them build that chemistry, and I think that's going to be big with those two things I've talked about with the downsides, the pressing and the working as a unit. Some poor matchups for this side. Probably, I can see Liverpool. I know I said Liverpool is like a Real Madrid is a poor matchup for Liverpool as well, but when you're looking at Liverpool compared to Real Madrid, Liverpool are also a difficult side that can give Real Madrid trouble. I think another side that can obviously give Real Madrid trouble is Barcelona, with just how they play. A Chelsea is another side that I can see giving Real Madrid trouble, just because they're really physical. So yeah, I would say those three sides would give Real Madrid trouble. But then again, I truly believe if this side can work as a unit, there's not a side in Europe that it's gonna contend with them for this Champions League trophy. And I think it's a project, and I hope Xabi Alonso treats it as a project, and I hope Real Madrid give him time to treat it as a project. Because this is definitely like a season thing, you need to see it out. It's kind of like with Arne Slot. If you saw last season, he wasn't afforded many signings, and it was kind of just like figure out the side. And I think because of what the situation was in the Premier League with all those injuries and a lot of sides underperforming, they won the league. Not to say that they weren't a great side; they were obviously a phenomenal side. But when you put them up against like big sides outside of the Premier League, they did suffer. They did face difficulties, especially against PSG, and that was early on PSG. So there was that, but Arne Slot was allowed to kind of mold a squad and see how he wants to work and all that. And now this season they splashed the cash and brought in all the players. They're fully bought into this Arne Slot project. Even if you look back to when Klopp started, it was the same sort of setup with seeing how Klopp wants the side to work, and then splash the cash and drop the money on the big names like Salah. They bought Salah, they bought Mane, they bought Van Dijk. We know how good they were. Firmino came in. Coutinho, they wanted to keep Coutinho, but they sold Coutinho. With that money that they generated, they bought in more players. Konate was brought in later on. Like, that's how they built their squad after buying into the project of the manager. And I think this season will be big. You want to see positive things from Xabi Alonso. I think obviously with the expectations that Real Madrid have, you're gonna want to win everything that's available. But if we can see the vision with Alonso, we can see like a clear, solid potential, then next season he'll be afforded even more kind of a allowance in the transfer window. This season, and I guess you can frame it as, you brought in House and you brought in Trent, like you brought in Carreras. These were all, other than Carreras, I would say, Howson and Trent were like done deals regardless. Like they were going to come in. We needed a center back regardless. Howson came in. We needed a right back regardless. Trent came in. Trent was it was essentially confirmed back in February. for him to come in. Howson, we needed a center back. He came in. I think Mastantuono, we were watching him very, very closely, and it wasn't. Jabi Alonso obviously wanted him a lot, but he came in because Santiago Solari was like pushing for Mastantuono a lot, and then Carreras was signed based on what Jabi Alonso wanted. So I guess you can say that's the one signing that they gave Jabi Alonso. But I think next season, if we see good patterns from this side, we'll see a lot of key exits, but also key inclusions for Jabi Alonso to build the side that he wants to build with Real Madrid. But yeah, I think that concludes it. It's been a long video. But yeah, don't really have much else to say. Obviously, the Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City breakdowns will come. I'm very excited to make those, and then obviously the Ballon d'Or video is still coming. I'm just waiting for the nominees to be announced. But yeah, thanks for watching, and then I'll see you in the next video.